Shalom, shalom. Welcome to Supporting Yah's Cornerstone. My name is Heshra'ah, and that name means moved by Yah. So in today's video, it is a just me sharing what I've read video, where I just share with you what I've read over the years and what I got out of it or learned from the book, or what really stuck with me. So today I'm going to talk about the autobiography of Mr. Nelson Mandela. And his book is called Long Walk to Freedom. Long Walk to Freedom by Mr. Nelson Mandela. And so, yeah, that's a pretty thick book. But I like this book so much that at the time, years ago, I also read it to the children in homeschool. So I know. And they sat through it, sure. It's a thick book, but it's worth it. It's a really good book. Was it better than the movie? I only saw a few minutes of the movie. Me and my children sat down to try to watch it some years ago, and it was like, we had read the book together, so. But I'm not saying don't watch the movie. I'm just saying that the book is definitely better. But books always are. I mean, I enjoyed the movie Malcolm X, but his autobiography, when you read it, is so much better. Another thing before I move on with the topic is that on YouTube, people read books. So if you're busy, if you feel like you're too busy to read, or you've gotten out of the habit of reading, then you may find some of the books that I mentioned being read on YouTube. And so you'll be amazed at how many books are being read on YouTube. Just type in the book, and it's very possible somebody's reading it, where you can just listen to it like you would an audio book, or a book on tape, or a book on CD, or something like that. So today I'm going to talk about what I got out of reading Long Walk to Freedom by Mr. Nelson Mandela. So at the time I checked out this book years ago, I really didn't know much about Mr. Nelson Mandela at all, except he was a freedom fighter and he had been in prison a long time at one time in his life before trying to help his people. So that's basically all I knew. Other than that, not much. And that his wife was named Winnie, I think. So that's about all I knew. Or he had been married to a woman named Winnie at some point. That's about all I knew. So I checked out the book just because I like reading autobiographies. And so there was, at that time, a section of Hebrew Israelite or African American books in one of our libraries in my area. And so I would just go over there and choose an autobiography or whatever to read. And so that's what happened. And I ended up reading this. And it really impacted my mind. I learned a lot more about Mr. Nelson Mandela, more than I ever knew, or, some things about his life surprised me. But one impact that his book had on me was, it made me, when I look down, I'm just looking down at my notes, it made me realize how much I missed by being in America, by being raised in America, by, not being in Israel and being, and also how much I missed by not being raised according to the culture of my people, Hebrew Israelites. Okay, because we lost our culture when we lost our culture really before we even came here to America, but we completely lost our culture here in America. Even today, most of us live according to Western thought, Western dress, Western lifestyle. And aka European lifestyle, Greek lifestyle, basically, you know. And so reading about his childhood, which is how the book starts, and he describes where he's from, he describes what his life was like. Even though I'm not one of his people, it made me reflect on my own people and my own life, It really came home to me that even though the culture of some things, the culture of my people and his people are the same, and even though in some ways it's different, it really made me realize how different my life was, because my people lost, or our people have lost who they are. We lost our land, our language, our culture. It really struck home to me reading his autobiography. I mean, it was just amazing to me at the time. It's like you lose something and you lost something. It's brought to your attention, but then you really just you don't fully grasp it to the fullest of what it meant. But when I read about his childhood and his life, of his people, and him living when he was growing up according to the culture of his people, also living in the land of his people, that really just touched home for me how much I missed, and how much our people missed by us being in America and all the different places that we are, other than being in Israel, living according to our own culture and our own lifestyle. And so that really just touched me. I remember a Moray asked years ago, we were in a class, and he asked, how many of you think of Jerusalem every day? And I was so embarrassed in my mind, because I thought, well, I don't think about Jerusalem every day. I was so embarrassed, in my mind, because I'm like, oh my God, what does that mean? Because I don't. What does that mean about me? And so I remember that. But after reading Mr. Nelson Mandela's book, it did cause me to more think about Africa. Even though my people are really from what they call the Middle East, at that time I still had more of a African thought when I thought about home per se. And so it did make me think about Africa more. And I guess Jerusalem in a sense more. Now when I think about home, I think about Israel. I don't think about Africa. Is not my main thought anymore, so to speak. I think about Israel and what they call the Middle East. That's what I think about. But that book helped develop that, reading about his life. It was just amazing. The next thing that came to mind was how so much similar the struggle was between apartheid there and the civil rights movement here. It was like so much stuff, so many things about it that was parallel. That really stood out to me too. The next thing, it was a lot of good things to learn and get to know about Mr. Nelson Mandela, about their struggle there to fight against apartheid at that time. It a lot of good things to know and to learn from him are in the book, Long Walk to Freedom. But I'm just touching on a few of the things that I remember that just really stood out to me. But I would encourage you to read the book, or see if it's being read online, or if you subscribe to Audible, or if you have Audible that where you can they have a series of books to choose from, or lots of books to choose from that you can download to your phone or whatever, listen to. That would definitely be worth it. Okay, but first I would check YouTube if you want to listen to it, because then you can listen to it, free without paying for that subscription service. But one other thing that really stood out to me in the book, I really like how he handled separating from his wife at the time, Winnie, which told a lot about the type of man he was and his character. Now, keeping in mind, I realized that he did not serve the Creator. I realized he had his flaws, but I'm just saying, I don't know exactly what all those flaws were, but I'm just saying the points that stood out to me, the part of his character that showed through his actions and decisions sometimes in the book. So that's one thing that really stood out to me that I really liked, is how he handled the separation and how he handled the divorce, and what he said openly, and then things that he wrote that he had told his children in the book. And so I'm going to read that chapter. It's a short chapter, and he touches on that in chapter 109 of the book, talking about when he had to openly announce his separation from Winnie, and some things concerning sacrifices his children made when, being the children of a freedom fighter, so to speak. And so I'm going to take this time to read a few sections of the book. And I'm talking about Long Walk to Freedom by Mr. Nelson Mandela. And if you're interested in purchasing the book, I bought this one, I think, from the library book sale. Or my husband bought it from library book sale. I think I bought one from library book sale, and I think he bought one separately. But you can get a lot of good books from library book sales now, because they're getting rid of a whole lot of books, because they trying to get in movies and new books that people will actually read. So you might get some good cheap books from that you would want to read from your local library book sale. So I'm going to read a portion of a couple of sections of Mr. Mandela's book, starting in chapter 1. I'm just going to read a small little snippet. And excuse me if I may mess up some of the pronunciations. But it says, I was born, this is in chapter 1, just a small snippet of it. I was born on the 18th of July, 1918, at Mavizo, a tiny village on the banks of the Mabashi River, in the district of Umtata, the capital of Transky. The year of my birth marked the end of the Great War, the outbreak of an influenza epidemic that killed millions throughout the world. That's just a little snippet. My father, Godla Henry, I can't pronounce his last name, so I'm not going to mess it up, was a chief by both blood and custom. So his father had been a chief. So I'm going to move on to another and read another small snippet of the book. This is still in chapter 1. It's just a few pages down, or a couple of pages down. So it says, all told, my father had 4 wives, the third of whom, my mother, Noskikini Fanny, the daughter of Nakidima. Okay, so Mr. Nelson Mandela's mother was his father's third wife. So his people practiced polygamy. I hate to mess up the names. So let me see. So Miss Fanny, the daughter of Nikitama from the Amamipimvu clan, belonged to the right-hand house. Each of these wives, the great wife, the right-hand wife, my mother, speaking of his mother, or the left-hand wife, and the wife of the support house had her own corral. A corral was a homestead and usually included a simple fenced-in enclosure for animals, fields for growing crops, and one or more thatched huts. The corrals of my father's wives were separated by many miles, and he commuted among them. In these travels, my father seared 13 children, in all 4 boys and 9 girls. I am the eldest child of the right-hand house and the youngest of my father's 4 sons. And so I thought that was so interesting. And so his father would go and spend a week with each one of his wives and kind of rotate like that. So I'm going to fast forward all the way to chapter 109, where he talks about his separation from Winnie. And I really liked it because a lot of times people divorce and they separate. They'll badmouth each other. There's no appreciation sometimes for the struggle, parts of the struggle they went through together. And in his case, him being a freedom fighter or a leader in the fight for the freedom of his people to overcome apartheid, then, definitely his family had to make sacrifices, and his wife made a sacrifice, and his children. And I just really thought that said a lot for his character, that he wasn't, even though he did not agree with some of the decisions and things that Winnie made, it seems, or they couldn't agree on whatever they couldn't agree on, he still had a respect for her. And then he didn't seem to air, their dirty laundry, so to speak, in public. So I really just liked it. And how he worded everything, I just really liked it. So, chapter 109 is really short, so I'm going to try to read it quickly. On April 13, 1992, at a press conference in Johannesburg, flanked by my 2 oldest friends and comrades, Walter and Oliver, I announced my separation from my wife. The situation had grown so difficult that I felt that it was in the best interest of all concerned, the ANC, the family, and Winnie, that we part. Although I discussed the matter with the ANC, the separation itself was made for personal reasons. I read the following statement. The relationship between myself and my wife, Comrade Nomzamo Winnie Mandela, has become the subject of much media speculation. I am issuing this statement to clarify the position and in the hope that it will bring an end to further conjure. Comrade Nomzamo and myself contracted our marriage at a critical time in the struggle for liberation in our country. Owing to the pressures of our shared commitment to the ANC and the struggle to end apartheid, we were unable to enjoy a normal family life. Despite these pressures, our love for each other and our devotion to our marriage grew and intensified. During the 2 decades I spent on Robben Island, she was an indispensable pillar of support and comfort to myself personally. I'm just going to say Miss Mandela, so I won't mess up her African name. She endured the persecutions heaped upon her by the government with exemplary fortitude and never wavered from her commitment to the freedom struggle. Her tenacity reinforced my personal respect and love and growing affection. It also attracted the admiration of the world at large. My love for her remains undiminished. However, in view of the tensions that have arisen owing to differences between ourselves on a number of issues in recent months, we have mutually agreed that a separation would be best for each of us. My action was not prompted by the current allegations being made against her in the media. Miss Winnie has and can continue to rely on my unstinting support during these trying moments in her life. I shall personally never regret the life Miss Winnie and I tried to share together. Circumstances beyond our control, however, dictated it should be otherwise. I part from my wife with no recriminations. I embrace her with all the love and affection I have nursed for her inside and outside prison from the moment I first met her. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you will appreciate the pain I have gone through. And so that was his statement at the time, his public statement. Perhaps I was blinded, and so this is back to the book. Perhaps I was blinded to certain things because of the pain I felt for not being able to fulfill my role as a husband to my wife and a father to my children. But just as I am convinced that my wife's life while I was in prison was more difficult than mine, my own return was also more difficult for her than it was for me. She married a man who soon left her. That man became a myth, and then that myth returned home and proved to be just a man after all. As I later said at my daughter Zenzi's wedding, it seems to be the destiny of freedom fighters to have unstable personal lives when your life is the struggle as mine was. There is little room left for family. That has always been my greatest regret and the most painful aspect of the choice I made. We watched our children growing without our guidance, I said at the wedding. And when we did come out of prison, my children said, we thought we had a father and one day he'd come back. But to our dismay, our father came back and he left us alone because he has now become the father of a nation. To be the father of a nation is a great honor, but to be the father of a family is a greater joy. But it was a joy I had far too little of. And that's the end of that chapter. It was a very, very short chapter. But I just like how he handled that situation. It was one more portion that I wanted to read. And you would have thought that, I don't know. I've always known Nelson Mandela's name as Nelson Mandela. That's who we all know him as. You would have thought, I don't know, did we even care that may have not been the name his parents gave him? So that was something interesting in the book. So I'm going to read that very, very quickly. So this video won't be too long. But this is in chapter 2, at the end of chapter 2. Africans of my generation and even today generally have both an English and an African name. Does that remind you of some people? Most of us have English names, and then when we start to serve Yah, most of the time we get a Hebrew name. And so I know that's in my case because I came into this way of life with a German name. And so I received my Hebrew name years and years ago, which is Heshra. But my English name is a German name because my father was taking German in college at the time. So there's something most of us can relate to. Whites were either unable or unwilling to pronounce an African name and considered it uncivilized to have one. That day, and I hope I don't mess this name up, Miss Madingen told me that my new name was Nelson. Why she bestowed this particular name upon me, I have no idea. Perhaps it has something to do with the great British sea captain, Lord Nelson, but that would be only a guess. And so the name his mother and father gave him was not Nelson. His teacher gave him that name. So I'll go back a little bit. On the first day of school, my teacher, Miss Mandela gave each of us an English name. So that particular teacher issued out a lot of new names to other people's children that day. So, yeah, that's just something serious. Anyway, that's a few little snippets from the book Long Walk to Freedom. And I hope that you enjoyed this little talk about it. But if you would like to contact me to ask me a question, or to if you have a video suggestion or anything of that nature, you can contact me at yazcornerstone@gmail.com. yazcornerstone@gmail.com. You're also welcome to leave comments at the bottom of the video. You're also welcome to follow me on Instagram at Supporting Yaz Cornerstone. There's also a Facebook page called Supporting Yaz Cornerstone also. Thank you for your time. Shalom, shalom.